Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots and Genealogy, and I am here today with a very special guest, Nicola Mastronardi, who is an expert on the Samnite people. And also here is Letizia Sinisi from Italy Rooting, who's going to help translate.
Hi.
Hello.
So thank you both for being here. I appreciate it.
Thanks to you, Bob, for the invitation.
Grazie per l'invito. Thank you.
So, Nicola, my first question for you is where is your family from? And then also, why did you choose to research the Samnite people?
First question is simple. My family is from center Italy, center of Italy. And my father is from Molise, and my mother is from Abruzzo. Are two region sisters in the center of Apennine, of Italian Apennines.
So that's why you decided to research the Samnite people, because that's where they come from,
I think yes. Io penso di sì. Io penso che
to tell the truth, I believe that my birth and my parents were just not chance.
Già mio padre mi portava nei luoghi della archeologia.
For example, when I was very young, when I was a child, my father, that was a teacher, used to take his students to the Pietrabondante site, and Nicola, and he was with him all the time. So when he was very young, my father loved our land, and he transmitted to me this love by chance, but really I don't think it's just by chance. My mother was born in Abruzzo, that is the region of the Marsi, and actually my father was born in the Samnite region, and my mother was born in the Marsi region. So it's not just by chance, because these were Marsi and Samnites, the most important peoples that fought against Rome and then generated Italy.
Per ultimo, i miei nonni e i miei antenati da 500 anni abitano.
And last but not the least, my grandparents and my ancestors have been living in the same area where I live for 500 years. And actually, they used to live, they were peasants, and they used to live on the stones that look up at Pietrabondante, that is and was the capital, the religious capital of the Samnites.
You know, a lot of Americans, Italian Americans, do not understand. And no, I didn't know. And I was very happy to visit there, because I didn't realize when we put the tour together that we were actually going to visit such a wonderful place. But what would you say to Italian Americans who don't understand the history of the real Italy?
I think that not even Italians know well the history of Italia, that was born in those places. In Italy, and in the historical interpretation, also in Italy, when we study, our students study history of Italia, it seems as if Italia was born with Romulus and Remo, with Rome, which is not in fact what really happened, because there was another Italia that was born before, and that was also against Rome. So there is another history that needs to be known. And what is important is that in order to know Italy, we need to know that history, because today's Italy is influenced, strongly influenced by that history and by the Roman Empire. And we need to know exactly what happened, as for example, there were 12 peoples, different peoples with 12 different languages. that today influences the dialects in our regions. You see that yellow stain in the map. That was where Roma was.
Mm.
And this is a map dating back 500 before Christ. This is a cultural map where you can see that all the languages and all the peoples that populated Italy in 500 before Christ. So Rome existed, but it was just a little place in the center where the yellow color is. When we study in our books, history books, this period of the history, so 500 before Christ, we tend to study only Rome. And although books speak about all the other peoples, we don't know exactly the nature of these people. We don't know the history of those peoples. When we go in the north of Italy, we have the Galli and we have the Celts were peoples that came from the northern Europe. Then there were also the Liguri and Veneti that had other characteristics, other nature, other history. And then there were the Etruscans that populated the entire Tuscany, that, as you can see, which were much greater than Rome. When we go to the south and you see that border, the blue border, that indicates the Greeks and also the Greek colonies that were much richer than Greece itself. Puglia is a very unique example of how three different peoples have still influences in today's Puglia. For example, there were two different peoples. In the north, there were the Dauni, in the center, Peuceti, in the south, Messapi. And when you go to Puglia today, you find three different languages, completely different cultures in the north, center, and south of Puglia. So the position, the geographical position of Italy has always, of the peninsula actually, had always made this territory very attractive for different people. And also today we have the influence of and the result of all these occupations and all these the presence of all these people. For example, we have different languages, we have a lot of types of pasta, we have a lot of types of cheese, we have 400 types of cheese, for example, and we have from an environment point of view, a high level of biodiversity, which has always attracted a lot of people here. So, in fact, due to this diversity, we have a lot of cultures. We have not one single Italian culture, but we have different Italies, we can say different cultures, from north to south, passing through the islands. So, what is important in this map, if you look at the green part of it, is where that area was populated by the most important population, that is the one of the Italics, that involved different peoples, Umbrians, Sabines, Samnites, and
Lucani, certo.
Lucans. What was important was that there was not one single state, administratively and politically speaking, but culturally, from a linguistic point of view, religious point of view, they were united in one single entity, the Italics. Now, another region that represents what we are saying about this variety of population and culture is Sicily, where on the right, sorry, in the green part, you find the Siculi that were an Italic population. And then you have in the pink area the Sicani, and then the Elimi. So 3 different cultures, 3 different, completely different peoples. Why Catania dialect is completely different from Palermo one.
And you know, that's a really, really interesting map. One thing that I have to ask is, since the Samnites were so much, or had so much more territory than Rome, how did Rome become so powerful?
Allora, visto che i Samniti occupavano un'area geograficamente molto più ampia di quella in cui era Roma, come mai Roma è diventata così potente?
Perché noi non eravamo un unico popolo. E quindi Roma era un'unica nazione.
So, due to the diversity and the different different peoples that populated that area of the Italics, there was not one single identity. So there
No,
was
no,
one
nation, sorry, scusami, non una singola nazione, non un singolo stato, proprio politicamente intendo.
So
Scusami.
politically and administratively, there
Eravamo
was
divisi,
not
sì.
a unique state. So
Yes.
all these people were completely divided between themselves, divided from a political point of view, while Rome had an empire, and there was
Allora,
Roman identity. So
possiamo vedere
Italics,
questa cartina
that is
dello stesso
the green
periodo.
area that
Allora,
we
gli italici
have
sono
seen,
divisi, avevano l'unica
had the
lingua,
same
l'unica
religion,
religione,
culture, and
un'unica
language,
cultura,
but
quel
they were
territorio
divided
verde che abbiamo
into
visto prima,
little
ma erano
nations.
divisi in piccole nazioni,
And so
Umbri,
they were
Piceni,
and
i Vestini,
little,
quelle
like
province.
today,
I
like we can say
Sanniti avevano un
provinces.
grande
So little
territorio,
administrative
divisi anche loro in piccole
nations.
tribù,
And
Caudini,
that was a
Frentani,
big difference
Caricini.
versus Rome, because
Roma
Rome
aveva
had a centralized
disposizione
government
statale centralizzata,
and was
mentre
a
noi
state, was an
eravamo
empire with a
divisi.
central administration. An
E
example
quando
for
noi,
all
i
that
ragazzi che sono diventati
can show the difference
Samniti,
with
dalla
Rome
Sabina,
is that
diciamo
Samnites, for
800
example,
anni
when
prima di Cristo,
young
hanno fatto
Samnites
una
went from
migrazione,
the
sono andati
Sabina,
a
that is, there was
conquistare
another
le terre
little
dell'attuale
region
Molise,
in
non hanno
800 before
conquistato
Christ, and
territori
they
per
went
la
to
mangiata,
conquer
ma avevano una
some
cultura
lands
diversa da Roma.
in Molise.
Hanno
When they
fondato una
conquered
piccola
those
nazione,
lands,
così
they
tutti gli
didn't
altri.
do that
Invece
for
Roma,
the
quando
motherland,
conquistava i
but
territori,
they did
conquistava
that
i
for
territori per
themselves.
sé
So those
e ci
lands
entrava
became
tutto.
Samnites. While
Yes.
when Rome conquered lands, they became Roman. And so this was a completely different mindset, and also a way of administratively managing all the colonies and all the conquests.
So how long did it take Rome to conquer or overtake the Samnite, that green region that we were looking at?
Quanto tempo ci è voluto per Roma per la conquista dei Sanniti?
Allora, sappiamo che Roma è nata nell'VIII secolo, a metà dell'VIII secolo avanti Cristo. Prima di 4 secoli, anzi quasi 5 secoli, dunque,
Now, we know for certain that Rome was founded in
allora, Roma è
mid
nata,
8th
ripeto, Roma è
century
nata
before
nell'VIII
Christ,
secolo avanti Cristo. Prima di
and
4 secoli non
it
aveva
took
nessuna influenza in
4
Italia e
centuries
penisola. Abbiamo questo periodo.
before
Nel
they
IV
were
secolo avanti
asked
Cristo,
to
chiamata
fight
appunto
against
poi
Samnites that were expanding
in
in the
aiuto contro i
territory.
Sanniti che si
And
espandevano.
so in
E
the
siamo nel
4th century before
350
Christ,
avanti Cristo. Da
exactly
quel momento
in
si sono
350
scontrati
before
i
Christ,
Romani e i Sanniti e per quasi
4
un
big
secolo
wars were needed in 1 century so that Rome could conquer Samnites. So that is not the end of the story, because something happened 2 centuries after that.
When
And so-
Italy was born. Italy was born.
And so, did Rome then consider them Romans, or did they still keep their own gods and their own languages and things?
Roma li considerava romani una volta conquistati, oppure loro comunque mantennero le tradizioni, cioè si mantenne quella diversità, quel distacco. So after the 4 big wars, Samnite big wars, we are talking about mid-3rd century before Christ. For other 2 centuries, Samnites remained Samnites. From a religion point of view, from the script, the writing, the language, they had the Oscar language. Certainly in those 2 centuries in which they had already been conquered, the nobles started learning Latin, that is the language of the Roman. But Samnites continued to celebrate their religious rites in the sanctuaries like Pietra Abbondante one. So, technically speaking, from a political point of view, after the 4 big Samnite wars, all Italics populations became soci, which is actually still in our language today, and which is partners, like partners, which actually were forced allies of Rome. Which means, why forced? Because once being conquered, they could keep their cults, their rights, etc. But they had to give away and to give to Rome territories, lands, and people, young people, to fight during the Roman wars.
Yeah.
That happened also with Hannibal. A lot of Italics, because the Italics people were warriors, strong warriors, and then they were
the best
warriors, and so Rome included them and used them to fight.
Well, sure. Yeah, of course, that would make sense. So, is it true that at one point, I guess before the Roman took over, that the Samnites had the idea to unite Italy?
I Samniti avevano un'idea di unificare l'Italia, nonostante the Samnites' idea of unifying Italy. They were the first to think of Italia as a one single entity. And the reason for that was also to be stronger than Rome.
Questo accadde alla fine della loro storia, dal 91 avanti Cristo.
And this dream actually became reality, but at the end of their history, because it was already 91 before Christ when they actually created a confederation. And now, Nicola, we talk about it, and they unified it and they created Italy. So, what happened in 91 before Christ? Actually, after 2 centuries, 200 years from the conquer of Rome, the Italics were divided into 2 different trends, positions, political positions. One was the one of Marsi and other populations that had learned Latin, and so they wanted the Roman citizenship. That was very hard to receive. and some knights that had never accepted to have been conquered by Rome. So the two populations united in a confederation.
Roma aveva
The position of Rome was of not giving the citizenship, the Roman citizenship, especially to the Marsi population, for example, that wanted to have that citizenship. But the conditions in which the populations wanting the citizenship were actually humiliated. So Romans humiliated these people that wanted to receive the citizenship. And so the Marsi were very angry about this situation. Some knights, on the other hand, that had never accepted to have been conquered by Rome, started thinking of independence and to receive the freedom that they had before being conquered.
un nuovo rapporto dignitoso alla pari con Roma.
They wanted to be in an equal relationship with Rome. And that was also because most of the army, the Roman army, was composed of Samnites, italics, after 2 centuries. So they felt they could free themselves.
Loro si sentirono forti.
They felt strong. So in the coin on the left, Gavio Papilo Mutilo, and the name is written there in Latin.
No, in Osco,
sorry.
Samnite.
In the Osco Samnite language, there was written emperor. So they created a coin for themselves in their Osco language. This person created this coin because had the idea of unifying and put together some of the Italics peoples and create an independence from Rome. On the right, there is another coin where there are 2 captains of the army, and there is a little piglet among between them, and they swear for an alliance.
Era in effetti è la stessa moneta, una faccia e l'altra.
Okay. Are 2 faces of the 2 sides of the same coin. Now, this is a special moment also for this interview, as actually because in this coin, again 2 sides of the same coin, Gavio Papilo Mutilo creates the coin where he, on the right, you can see 4 different peoples, Italics peoples, that create an alliance, and they unite into a confederation. They create a confederation, and the name of this confederation, made of 4 different peoples, is Vitellium in the Oscan language, you see on the left, which is actually Italia.
In latino tradotto Italia.
Vitellium, if you translate Vitellium into Italian, in the Italian language, it's Italia. This is a very symbolic coin. On the right, you can see a bull that is the symbol, the totemic animal is of the Samnites, that kills the wolf of Rome. Rome didn't want to recognize freedom and independence to Italics peoples.
E li aveva umiliati nonostante loro avevano conquistato l'impero per Roma con la loro esercito.
They had been humiliated despite all the contribution that they had given in the army. After the confederation of the four people, now 6 peoples unify into enter into the confederation, and this time this is the very first coin with Italia written on it. Why was that? Because although there were some Samnites, Marsi population had entered the confederation, and Marsi were the Samnite people that had learned Latin, and they actually were against Rome because they wanted to be recognized the citizenship, and they wanted to be part of the Senate. They wanted to be part of the political life, but they were refused that, and so they ally with the other Italics people, and then Italia, the first coin with Italian. And again, after some time, those 4 peoples that had become 6 and now are 8 peoples ally under the leadership of Quinto Popilio Silone, that Silo is called Silo, that was Mars, from the Marsi population, and they thought that entering in the confederation that they should be stronger. And again, Italia, you can see on the left, Italia on the coin.
Ecco la moneta più bella. Ecco com'è nata Italia, contro Roma, purtroppo.
And this is the most beautiful coin, and unfortunately we have to say that Italia was born against Rome.
Anche se poi si unirà a Roma. Poi la storia, bisogna leggere i romanzi per vedere com'è finita.
In 91 before Christ, but at least at that time. But then history and with time passing, things were different. They united anyway, and Italia has become something different. But this is the root, the origin, based on the archaeological findings, based on history and studies.
Alla fine di questa nostra chiacchierata vi mostrerò com'è finita la storia fra Italia e Roma. Ok?
And we can say that at this point in 91 before Christ, we had Italy on one side and Rome on the other. And now Nicola is going to show us how,
Dopo.
and afterwards, at the end of this interview, we are going to be shown how that history ended.
You know, one of the other things that I just have to ask, because when we were in the amphitheater, I found that the stone seats were the most comfortable seat that I ever sat in. So the Samnites must have been very advanced in science to be able to figure that out, correct?
Allora, quando Bob ha visitato l'anfiteatro, lui si è seduto, c'erano sugli sedili di pietra che sono stati il sedile più comodo che lui abbia mai provato. Quindi questo gli ha fatto pensare che i Samniti fossero fortemente avanti, innovatori. The Italics had contacts with Greece and the Greek culture much before the Romans. In fact, Professor Adriano La Regina, that is responsible for all excavations and is one of the most important archaeologists in Italy, he says that perhaps the Greek culture was intermediated, was transmitted to Romans through the Italics. And having the Greek culture meant having learned also the architectural techniques, philosophy, and we have to remember theater, the way in which they created and they built theaters and amphitheaters. And they were very close also to the Etruscans. And we have to also to remember that while the Greek were technologically prepared, where they techniques, they had very reasonable people, were reason. Etruscans were beauty, were the philosophy of well-being, and so putting together those cultures and the contact with those cultures created the best possible balance between technique and well-being. In fact, I remember your face when you were sitting there. You were actually like enjoying your sitting. You were well. You felt well. Ho aggiunto qualcosa sugli Etruschi. And here we are in Pietrabondante. This photo is from the amphitheater in Pietrabondante, where Bob was sitting, and where those seats are actually the most comfortable ever.
Yes, and it was it was almost like a religious experience to be at that site.
Per lui è stato come una esperienza religiosa aver visitato quel sito, quel santuario. That is actually a magical place, and because it was very important for the Samnites, and it's like the sorrow and all the tragedy of the end of the Samnite civilization is still felt, and so it's very energetic. A lot of vibrations. You can feel a lot of vibrations there.
Qui c'è la risposta del perché io ho cominciato a raccontare questa storia.
These vibrations, this energy is perhaps at the origin of the choice for Nicola to talk, to study, and also to live there. In fact, also now that he's talking, he feels goosebumps on his skin because he's absolutely sure that they want to be they want their memory is there, and they don't want to be forgotten. They don't want to be they want some justice some way from the story.
Giustizia della memoria.
The memory justice.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do this too, because so many people don't know about this. And before we go, Nicola, I want to give you a chance. I know you've written 2 books on the subject, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about the books.
Ci puoi raccontare qualcosa dei tuoi libri sui Sanniti?
Sì, bene. Grazie. Il mio primo libro.
Okay, this is Nicola's first book, Vitelliu, that is the Oscar name of Italia, and he wrote it because he felt the responsibility of telling a story that had been never told. This was a tragical history. A lot of sorrow was there, but it was a very epic history, and it's quite strange that nobody had written something about that in the past, or nobody had thought of shooting a film on that history.
È una storia che è più emozionante, più importante di Spartacus.
It's a history that is even more important than Spy War, where the destiny of the Western world was decided.
E questo libro racconta la storia di un nonno, che è Gavio Papio Mutilo Lembrato, che va a recuperare suo nipote che aveva salvato dalla strage di Silla, perché dobbiamo raccontare poi la fine, no?
This is the story of a grandfather, a Samnite grandfather, that goes and save his grandson that had been victim of Silla, that was one of the most criminal warriors in the story. The young grandson that was convinced to that thought of being Roman actually discovers through his grandfather to be a Samnite, and so the grandfather asks him 6 months of his time to accompany him to die in the Samnite lands. But through this travel, that is actually this is a travel back to his roots, and the grandson not only knows the history, all the history, but at the same time he goes back to his identity. So it's a sort of return to roots. Actually, it's a return.
That's what I was thinking.
So Vitelliu is, we can call it the mother book that is that all includes. It is well, the story is told from the beginning to the end. So Vitelliu is basically the summary of the whole story, and with Figli del Toro, that is the name is Sons of the Bull. This is one of 3 books, the first of 3 books that
Trilogy, yes.
is a trilogy that will go into the details of the whole story, starting from the social war until the end of the Samnite civilization,
E la nascita di Italia.
and including the birth of Italy. So these are the 3 books, the 3 main macro themes that Nicola is going to deal with this trilogy.
So are either of these in English yet, or are there plans to put them in English?
Sono già stati tradotti o ci sono piani per tradurre questi libri in inglese? No, the book, we tell you, has been translated already in Polish and is going to be published also in Poland. While there is no editor as we speak, or either English or American, so English speaking, that could be interested in translating it. But the good news, so there are definitely 60 pages that have already been translated to be for a presentation of the book to editors. But the good news is that there is definitely a subject for a film, and there is some interest in shooting a film on this story.
In English.
I believe Nicola wanted to show us one more thing before we wrap up. Is that right?
C'è un'ultima cosa che tu volevi dire prima di chiudere?
Sì, allora voglio mostrarvi la fine della storia, non del romanzo, ma della storia vera, ok?
I want to show you the end of the story, of the real story, not of the book, of the romance, of social war from 91 to 88 before Christ. And so this social war between Rome and Italia, they were definitely tired because they had there were 300,000 dead in only 3 years.
Wow.
So both populations were absolutely tired.
E quindi successe
Then
che
after these 3 tragic and absolutely bloody years,
ma
the war ended some way. But Rome was forced to give the citizenship.
agli italici. Sì. Solo che una parte di Roma, i conservatori, non voleva i Sanniti.
But Roman Empire, Roman population was divided into, like say, Labour Party and Conservative Party. And the Conservative Party didn't want Samnites in the Roman Empire.
Soprattutto Silla, Lucio Cornelio Silla, odiava i Sanniti a morte.
And above all, there was one of the Roman these fighters that
Capo
was
dei conservatori,
Cornelio
scusami, era il
Silla,
capo dei conservatori.
and he was the representative of the conservative party, let's say Lucio Cornelio Silla, that actually hated Samnites.
Quando tornò dall'Oriente nell'81 a.C., lui
When he came back from the Eastern world with the intention of killing all Samnites, and that's what he did.
e così fece. Dopo aver vinto la guerra contro i democratici, mandò
Silla created an entire army against Samnites,
cercò di fare
and
genocidio
actually
che
he
aveva
planned for a
osato
genocide.
creare uno Stato
And
contro
the
Roma.
responsibility of the
Aveva
Samnites, in
osato
his
creare
eyes,
l'Italia. I
was
Samniti
to
avevano
have
osato
created an
ideare,
independent
avere
state,
l'idea di uno
so to
Stato
have created
indipendente
Italia that
contro
was
Roma.
independent
Italia.
from Rome.
Sì.
He used to say,
Diceva
always
sì,
Silla,
che
that if
se anche un
only
solo
one
villaggio
Samnite
Samnita
village
fosse
had
esistito,
survived,
Roma non sarebbe mai
Rome
stata
would
tranquilla,
have never been quiet and in peace.
perché i
Because
Samniti
Samnites were
avevano
known
la
as
libertà nel
to be
loro stesso
free
sangue.
in their blood.
E
And
quindi cercò
he
di sterminarli, ci
succeeded
riuscì
in
quasi,
killing
e addirittura voleva la
almost all of
scomparsa dalla
them,
memoria
and
del popolo Samnita, dalla storia, la
he was so
damnatio
hateful
memoria.
that he wanted Samnites to be cancelled from memory, which is an expression in Latin that is damnatio memoriae, so like condemnation forever, not to be remembered anymore. And this is the reason why Nicola wrote the books and just save the memory of these people that were just free and loved freedom.
Ma alla fine vediamo come
Now,
finisce.
fortunately,
Silla morì,
Silla
per fortuna anche i dittatori prima o poi
died,
muoiono,
because also
e
the
allora
most terrible
Roma capì
and bloody
che doveva
emperors
unirsi
die, and
culturalmente,
Rome
politicamente,
understood
definitivamente
and
con gli Italici
started
e
thinking
creò,
of the
quando Silla
importance
morì,
of being
questa
united
moneta.
to Italics,
Ecco,
and they
Italia,
created
adesso ecco Roma,
a coin.
buono
This is the
spolore
reconciliation
di
coin
Roma.
that dates back to
Roma,
69 before
eccola qui,
Christ,
questa
with
è l'Italia con la
Italia
cornucopia,
and
questa è la dea Samnita,
Rome
la
that
dea
are
dell'abbondanza
together
Samnita.
with
Questo è il
the
simbolo della
symbols of
pace. E le due
dignity,
donne,
love, and
Italia e
virtue,
Roma, si
and
stringono la
peace.
mano,
And
si
this is the
guardano negli
symbol of
occhi
peace
e
on
si
the right,
riconoscono
and
reciprocamente
the
dignità,
abundance.
valore e virtù.
This is
E si
the sign of
fondono
the
Italia
abundance
e Roma.
between the
Da
two
questo momento ebbero una
women
storia
that
comune e
shake
Roma
their
poté
hands
conquistare
and they
l'impero
look
per
to
forza.
each other uh, for a stronger presence in the world. In fact, Rome was even stronger after reconciliation with the Samnites, and the story then ended with peace between the two enemies for a lot of centuries.
Naturalmente
And
questa Italia
Italia
rappresenta tutti i
on the
popolari
left,
sotto il Sole,
the
che
female on
purtroppo
the
sono
left,
stati martiri di questa storia.
represents all the Italics peoples that have been characters of this important story, and not only the Samnites.
Sono
An
stati
important,
martiri della libertà.
and they have been they have paid with blood for their freedom. And to me, it's particularly important that these are two women at the time where a lot of men were in the armies, etc. And so it's very important that sono donne. Per me, come donna, mi emoziona molto vedere ogni volta questa moneta, bellissima.
Yeah, well, this has really been amazing. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really hope that people understand now the long history of the Samnites and how they wanted to come together and unify Italy long before anybody else thought about it.
Ringrazia per questa intervista e spera veramente che adesso con tutte queste informazioni si capisca la storia dell'unificazione d'Italia, che è ben precedente a quella che i libri narrano, e che quindi, diciamo, e soprattutto la storia dei Samniti, che volevano unificarla molto prima rispetto ad altri. Nicola, thanks Bob and also the audience of this interview, and for the invitation. And he's also inviting and stimulating people, in also not only Italian Americans, but all those that could be interested in going into depth about this story, also to come to Molise and Abruzzo in the Apennines, that are the areas where this story has taken place.
Yes, yes, absolutely. People need to visit.
Dice, avranno bisogno anche di vederli questi luoghi, quindi dovranno visitare.
È un'altra sorpresa dell'Italia, perché l'Italia è piena di sorprese.
This is another surprise, something unknown of Italy, and Italy is full of surprises. So this is another surprise that Italy offers, and especially it's an important one, considering that nobody knows this story, or very few people know.
Well, thanks again. I appreciate it.